It's the clash of generations in London. We have a handshake here. The camera angle is a little bit suited towards watching the board, but on your right you have Hikaru Nakamura, and on your left we have Nigel Short. Hikaru, one of the best players in the world of chess in terms of speed, perhaps the strongest player out there in the playing venue because Magnus isn't there. Meanwhile, Nigel Short, former world championship challenger in 1993 against Garry Kasparov, an amazing player, but now no longer in his prime. This will be a very interesting battle to see. Whenever such a battle comes up between an existing top player and someone who has been at the top in the past, it's always interesting to see how things will pan out, because Nigel clearly has the understanding of being a world-class player, but then after a point you're no longer in touch with chess so much, you're not practicing like, let's say, how Hikaru is doing right now. So it'll be a lot of fun to see how things will happen here. And Hikaru getting into the groove, a handshake, and he has the white pieces. He plays c4, the English opening, e5 and a3. So playing it like reverse Sicilian. Remember, it's like e4, c5 and putting your pawn on a6. Always useful. Nigel pauses for a bit, pushes his pawn to d6. Hikaru, bit surprised there, brings his knight out to c3, g6 played. And now b4, the bishop comes out. The bishop also pushes itself on this long diagonal. d3, knight comes out to f6. And now pawn to g3, bringing in another fianchetto here on this diagonal. Black castles. Hikaru plays bishop g2. And now Nigel is deciding whether to put his pawn on c6 or his knight. He brings his knight out to c6. And Hikaru has to decide if he wants to play knight to f3 or e3, knight e2, pushes pawn to e4. He pushes b5, knight goes to e7 and plays e3 here. So white has a very flexible setup. a6 played, hitting this pawn. If you take, he would love to take with the rook with a nice position. a4 played here by Hikaru, gaining more space. c6 by Nigel. So he's striking at this pawn on b5. The knight comes out to e2. And the bishop moves to e6. I like how black is playing this. Castles here for white. And now will black go for even further central expansion with d5? Yes, he does. Pawn to d5. Look at the space that black has in the center with the pawns. Already nicely developed pieces. Hikaru maybe will try to push d4 at the right time. So first takes, pawn takes. And then he captures again on d5, clarifying the position. And now goes d4, forcing Nigel to play e4. And so that he can jump on f4 with his knight. But first bishop a3. And this is a very pleasant position for white somehow. The bishop is well placed. The knight is putting pressure. The other knight is going in. So clearly a lot of play for white. But in return, the bishop on g2 is passive. He goes a5. And of course, if queen a5, there's bishop e7 and attacking the queen. It's not a good idea. So you don't want to take it that way. Nigel goes knight c6. A great move. He's attacking a5 and wants to come in with his knight to c4. Hikaru has to be careful here. Also, black would love to expand on the king side at a later point. So Hikaru thinking hard here. Has 2 minutes on the clock. Knight a4. The knight takes on a5 and it jumps into c5, attacking the bishop. Knight comes into c4. It's very interesting play. Knight takes the bishop. Rook takes. And now black is a pawn up. Wonderful knight. Ready to push the pawn down the board. Wow. Nigel Short playing so well here. And Hikaru under big pressure. How's he going to come out of this? His knight f4 is possible. The rook just simply goes back. He goes bishop b4, keeping the bishop. But can we go a5? Yes, he pushes a5. Bishop comes back to c3. Now maybe knight d7, knight b6. He goes rook to a6. The queen blocks the pawn, but queen is never the best blockader, offering a trade of queens. Nigel takes it. He's a pawn up. He's doing well. Pushes the rook away, and now ready to push even one square further here. a4, no, goes bishop f8, a great move. The knight jumps to f4, keeping an eye on the d5 pawn, but it's well protected. a4 played. a4, a3 coming up. But there's bishop f1, putting pressure on the rook. This bishop, when it comes into the game, would be good news for the white side. Bishop f1, rook to a7, rook b1, attacking the knight. And now knight c4, maybe not the best because you have this knight d5 option. And that just destabilizes the knight. Nigel goes knight d7 and he has more time on the clock. He also has a superior position. Wow. Hikaru plays h4. He's hoping for Nigel to crack here. a3 played. Goes rook to b5. Now putting more pressure on d5 pawn. Rook c7. Maybe not the best. The best idea was rook b8, offering a trade. But bishop d2. Now the d5 pawn. You need to protect it somehow. It's being attacked twice. Don't know if there's an easy way. He goes rook b8. Guess that's a good move. But now you have rook takes. Knight takes. Knight e6, attacking the rook and the bishop, eventually picking up this bishop, and then this pawn on a3 could get potentially weak. So Hikaru shaking his head here. Maybe he doesn't like his position so much, but maybe it's the best position he has had in a few moves here. And he's calculating. Of course, Nigel has to keep his nerves here, which is not easy when you are facing someone like Hikaru. But he's played at the top. He's played with guys like Garry Kasparov and beaten them. He can do this. Rook takes rook. Knight takes the rook. And the knight jumps in, attacking the rook and the bishop. Hikaru finds the best continuation. Now rook a7 makes a lot of sense. But there's also rook b7 with the idea of rook b2 possible. Not so easy, but rook a7. The problem is knight f8, king f8. There is bishop b4. He goes rook b7, takes rook b2 and intermezzo. He takes the bishop. Wow. For the first time, Hikaru is starting to get better now. Knight e6. Knight comes to d7 and that's a bad move because of bishop b5. Not so easy move to find. He goes knight f4, putting pressure here. Think about it. Bishop b5, rook a7. Too much pressure for white. Knight goes to g4, but that's not the move you want to make. He is attacking f2, check. King f7, goes rook a7, pinning the knight. You can win this pawn, but you lose a piece. So king e8. But king e8 is met with bishop b5. King e6 is not possible. So he goes king e7. But now winning a piece with bishop b5 here. Yes, he plays it. So Hikaru is back in the game. In fact, more than back, he's completely winning. Knight comes back to f6. And I think one of the easiest ways to take this pawn on d5. Takes it. Knight takes and now rook takes d7. King comes up to e6. He takes another pawn. He's now 2 pawns up. Knight goes back to f6. Can we attack another pawn here with rook g7? He first gives a check, king d6. And now rook g7. Knight jumps in forward, takes king e7. And Hikaru, without even thinking, gives up an exchange, realizing that he will win this pawn. And he will have 4 pawns for an exchange. That's too much material. And he's totally winning here. Great decision. Bishop c6. King goes to g6. Check. King h6. He's bringing his king in. Rook b2. And now king comes up. Bishop e6. d5. The pawn is ready to roll now. d5 has been played. Nigel goes check. King comes up. Another check. And maybe it's time to start moving forward. Giving up your f2 pawn. He does it. Takes on f2. d6. It's totally winning. Rook f1. If you go d7, maybe he wants to come from behind and give a check. King e4. Played by Hikaru. And he's doing this step by step. And he's doing it in style. and Nigel Short resigns here. A very interesting game. One must say that Nigel played really well, but Hikaru in the end showed his class and managed to come out on the top. But a great fight between these two players.